Welcome to the OCIA Book Club. My name is Rosie Hernandez, Director of Formation and Evangelization. I'm reading and breaking down each part of the newly translated Order of Christian Initiation of Adults, reviewing the content and the important elements that it contains. Today we're looking at Children of a Catechetical Age, numbers 252 to 259. This is part 2 of the order. So part 1 is the complete process period for everyone. And now with part 2, we're going to start with different adaptations. And we start that by talking about the adaptations that we use with children of a catechetical age. And right from the beginning, number 252 tells us that children that were not baptized in infancy, who reach the age of discretion and catechesis, are then brought by their parents and guardians to this process. They are not baptized as infants. So what does that mean? Well, Canon 852, canon law, tells us that once they've reached the age of discretion, the age of reason, which is for us the age of 7, they are no longer to be brought to the church as infants, solely receiving the sacrament of baptism because of their parents. And so therefore they begin their own catechetical process. And I know there's often arguments about they're too young, but that's actually the same age when catechesis should begin for any child. A baptized child, a Catholic, who is preparing for confirmation, for First Communion, will usually begin their catechesis at the age of 7 as well. And so really isn't that extraordinary. So again, Canon 852 tells us this, that once they have passed the age of catechesis, the age of reason, which is 7, they are no longer to be baptized as infants. And because parents and guardians are the ones who are bringing them to this process, they are still dependent on them, and we have to take that into consideration within this process. So even though we want to say they're adults in the church, they can't be solely treated as adults because they still have dependents. Therefore, things like whether they come to Mass on Sunday, every Sunday, whether they attend sessions and things like that, the physicality is going to be dependent on the parents. And so the parents have to be involved in this process because of that dependence. We also want to make sure that we do have at least one parent that is fully committing to the process and that is willing to take part in it, not just drop them off, but is going to be an active part. That is sometimes a difficulty. Sometimes parents want them to come through for the sacraments, but do not want to participate themselves. And that's something that we need to talk with the parents about. Their participation is vital. We can't just, do the drop-off pickup thing. And I often explain it to them as, your child is not going to benefit from this at all. All they're going to do is receive the sacrament unless there's some type of family involvement. And so we really need to talk with parents and help them to understand that so they take part. Number 253 talks about something that we often don't talk about when we talk about children's catechumenate. We're worried about their formation, the curriculum, but it talks about their need for personal conversion suited to their age. We tend to think that children, let's give them a fun book that looks pretty and help them memorize things. But in actuality, the whole process of initiation is based on conversion, is based on experiences and encounters with God. And that is the same for children. So we have to help these children find age-appropriate ways to understand and then express their own personal spirituality and their journey with Jesus. Often with children, it's easier to talk about Jesus because we can point to him as a physical person, divine and human, and help them to understand that Jesus is their brother, Jesus is their friend. But we have to help them understand that difference. So their personal conversion needs to be seen to, as well as adapted for their age and adapted for their education level. Sometimes we want to say all second graders together, all third graders together, all fourth graders, or some parishes have all children of ages, all ages together. And that's something we have to look at. And that's the maturity level of the child and the ability of learning of the child. How can we best serve them? Not what makes it easier for us to put a class together, but really what's going to support them. You may have an 8-year-old that is very spiritual already and very mature, as opposed to an 8-year-old who has never had experience in faith. And so we want to look at that and help them develop in the best way possible. So we want to adapt the spiritual journey to help the child. That's what we look for. And the book does say that this, like for the adults, should extend over some years as it's necessary. And so most places will have for children a 2-year process. Some places will have a 3-year process. And that, again, really needs to depend on the needs of the child and the needs of the family. And it's not always easy to explain that. For adults, it's a little easier, I think, that are coming into the process for themselves. But when you have parents who are bringing their children, it's important that they understand this. It's not about how many classes they attend, but really about how they adapt to the formation and where their conversion experiences happen and how they encounter Jesus. And so it's really necessary to help them understand that. But it should take over a period of time. Suggested is at least 2 years. Again, some parishes will do 3 years. Now, please understand, when I say 3 years, I don't mean 1 year for baptism, 1 year for First Communion, 1 year for confirmation. I mean that all of their experience is for all sacraments to help them grow as Catholics. And it takes place over however long is necessary. And that'll be a whole other workshop on how to come up with and put together a process that benefits children. And we use the same steps and the same stages and the same rites as we do for adults, just in a bit of a different manner. And again, the next few episodes are going to explore that. Number 254 says their process depends on their formation. Okay, that's a big part of it, even though we say not curriculum, but their formation, how they are forming and learning. So A, they can and should be supported by their peers. A lot of times we want to help keep them separate. This is my children's OCIA class, and there's regular religious ed. But they really need time to interact with their peers, with peers that are also preparing for sacraments, or maybe are in a different type of program or process within the parish. But they should have that opportunity. Some examples of that might be if you have a religious education mass once a month, that they be part of that and have a dismissal at that mass so that they are with their peers. If there's some type of event that's for children of religious ed, that the children that are in the process of initiation are also included. If they are in the school, the Catholic school, the same thing. They are part of a parish initiation program, but they are also part of their religion classes in the school. And some people may think, well, that's too much. They're already doing classes. That's true, but the initiation process is different from catechesis, just plain catechesis. And so there does need to be some kind of hybrid or some kind of separate situation where they are constantly brought together with their peers as much as is logistically and physically possible. So it's something to think about. And then B, 254B says they need the help and example of their parents to guide them in Christian life. And this is where the importance of parents participating comes in. The parents need to be a part of the process. That's just, they have to. Because the way that the children are going to learn to live the faith is if the faith is lived at home. And if the faith is not lived at home, then everything they're learning in this process will go in one ear and out the other, or maybe go into the heart and then have no place to grow. And so we need to help parents understand that they're going to grow together as a family. And so parents don't have to come to weekly sessions, but maybe they come once a month to a session. And it's not a meeting, it's not where they have to just sit and listen, but maybe it's some type of activity with their children where they are sharing and growing together. So there are many ideas out there. Again, that's another workshop, but there are many ideas that you can use to incorporate parents so that we make sure parents are guiding them in this whole process. Number 255 again states that children in the same situation should be joined together. And so if you have children who are unbaptized, they are going to be in the process. And you may have children who are baptized in another Christian faith, just like you do with adults. They would be in the same process. And so it's easy to be able to put them together with other children that are in preparation. They may, if they're young, if they're 7, 8, 9 years old, and you have a First Communion retreat for your parish First Communion program, they might join together on that retreat with them so that they're with peers every now and then because they're all in preparation for sacraments. If you're working with teens, it's great to be able to match them up with the youth confirmation program in the parish. And the same thing, maybe they go away for the retreat with the confirmation students. Maybe they do take part in youth mass, or they connect with confirmation class every now and then when you're doing a safe environment lesson or you're doing a social justice lesson or something like that in confirmation program. Then maybe we bring those teens from OCIA over. And that's kind of easy to do if you're able to have your teen OCIA group, if you have one, meet at the same time as the teen confirmation, so that sometimes they're with the OCIA team and sometimes they're with the confirmation group as a whole, again, with their peers. So it's nice to be able to put them together with others in the same type of situation of sacrament preparation, even though they're not at the same level, so to speak. Number 256 reminds us that the celebrations, the best way to do it is to coincide with Lent and Easter. That doesn't mean that's the only time to do it, but traditionally that is the best way, that is the best time period. And so if you are doing a 2-year process, you may have your rite of entrance into the catechumenate in January or before Lent of 1 year, and then carry them through catechumenate through the next year or something along those lines. Or even, November of 1 year, and then carry through the catechumenate through the following year. So they do the Easter Pass. They do go through the Easter, Triduum, Holy Week, all of that in their first year. And then in their second year is when they are part of Lent, Purification, Enlightenment, and the Easter Vigil. And Canon 866 does tell us that even for children, the best time for initiation is Easter Vigil. And so the unbaptized are brought in at the Easter Vigil with the adults, unless it's a hardship, like it's a very big group and the children are going to fall asleep in the middle of Mass, which happened to me before at Easter Vigils when I had, 17, 20 adults to be fully initiated, as well as another 15 children to be initiated. It's a very long Mass for small children. And so I would do it either on Easter Sunday morning or on the following Sunday. But the Easter is the best time to celebrate these sacraments, so remember that. And it should align with their peers as well in some way. And so if you're doing it Easter season with, the confirmation group is going to receive their confirmation, and these are the kids they went to retreat with or something, then you're doing it at the Easter Vigil, and then hopefully confirmation is coming right before it or after it. And it's kind of nice because then you can celebrate together. But it's nice if you can align it with the peers. It does also go by discernment. Remember, it's not automatic. After 2 years, they automatically receive sacrament. So it's making sure that we discern with the families. Are the children ready? Are the families ready? And if it doesn't happen at Easter, they do not have to wait a full other year. You can do it at an off-season, so to speak. It doesn't have to be only Lent and Easter Vigil. That is a pastoral decision that you make as you go through discernment right before Purification, Enlightenment, whether they're ready or not to take that final step. So be aware of that. We're still working with discernment. Number 257, again, reminds us that the celebrations need to take place within the community. Okay, it does need to be in the parish community. It's not to be done privately. It's not to be done, just this certain people that we invite. It really needs, it is a community experience, just like any other sacrament is. It needs to be done with the parish community. However, if need, it can be done with a smaller representation of the community. So let's say you have a child in the group or a couple of children in the group that do not do well in front of large crowds, that maybe are on the spectrum to a certain extent, or there's some type of issue with that child. They're well prepared, you've discerned them ready for sacraments, but they just do not do well in front of big crowds like Easter Vigil or an Easter Sunday Mass. Then you can do it at a smaller Mass. Maybe you're going to do it at the 5 p.m. Mass on Saturday, the anticipated Mass for Sunday, instead of the Sunday morning Mass on another weekend or something like that. So that is a possibility if that situation comes up. It does not have to be done on a Sunday with a full church. You can do something a little different. What we frown upon is doing a closed mass where only certain people are allowed, or only certain part of the community. Let's say it is a school child, a child that goes to the Catholic school who is to be fully initiated. You wouldn't do it only at a school mass. It still needs to have parish representation present. And so you could do it maybe at an evening mass during the week that's not as joyful. But as I said, maybe the Saturday mass, that's the Saturday mass for the anticipated mass for Sunday. That would be a good place to do it if you needed a smaller crowd. Number 258 tells us that the Conference of Bishops, so our own Conference of Bishops in California, may make adaptations. And the USCCB has made the adaptation that there is an optional right of election, and the rites of handing on may be adapted along with some intercessions so that they're understood by the children. And so all of those are adapted so the children understand what's happening. Some of the language might be a little bit adult, a little bit over their head. We're not watering things down. We're just rewording things so that those specific things, the right of election and the rights of handing on, are worded in such a way that they understand fully what's happening. And there are adapted versions in the OCIA book, which we'll talk about in future episodes of this. So we want to make sure, above all, that the children understand, and it's in their language. 259 advises us to use any options we find in the general introduction of the OCIA, which is 34 and 35 in this book. And so making sure that we're well aware of that and that we've read ahead to understand it for our own sakes, as well as the sakes of the children and the rest of the team and the parents, that's going to be vital. So this is a short section. It's only, 7 paragraphs, but there's a lot in there to consider. It's not just to read it and understand it, but to really consider it. And so if you are working with children in the initiation process, my advice would be, as early as possible, before you start a new year with a new group of children, would be to sit down and study each of these paragraphs and get to know the canons that go along with these particular points with children, so that when questions come up, especially if this is a newer process for your parish, when questions come up, you're able to answer them, but also to point to where the references are in case people would like to read them themselves. You remember that canon law is available online. You do not have to buy the book. You can look up Canon Law of the Catholic Church, and you will find the link to the full document, and then you just need to look for number 852 or number 866, that whole area, and that will apply to the initiation process and sacramental preparation for children. So I hope this has been helpful as an introduction. The next 3 or 4 episodes, I believe, are going to continue these sections on children, and those will be available in the next couple of weeks. Until next time, thank you.